uchungu wa moyo, ulinifanya nione umbali nami. Ukweli ni kuwa uliposema hutaniacha kamwe, hivyo tu ndivyo unavyotenda. Na hulali pia waniwaza, Baba, nipe uvumilivu, uvumilivu, Baba, nipe uvumilivu, uvumilivu. Siku zangu zote nikungoje. Uvumilivu, uvumilivu, uvumilivu. Yesu, nitakungoja Yesu, nitakungoja, 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 ninakungoja Yesu, ninakungoja, 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 nitakungoja Yesu, nitakungoja, 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 ninakungoja Yesu, ninakungoja, ninakungoja, ninakungoja. Nitakungoja Yesu, nitakungoja, 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 Baba. Nitakungoja, oh Yesu, nitakungoja Yesu, nitakungoja, 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 nitakungoja.
Hello and good afternoon, viewers. Mamlaka Hill Chapel, we are so glad to be back this Wednesday in our midweek vibes. And in this program, we seek to look at issues that are affecting us from day to day. COVID is still with us. We have an extension from last week of another 30 days. And we are here for the next 30 days, even beyond the 30 days. We want to invite you and give you a very, very warm welcome to our program today. And today we'll be looking at the issue of depression among kids and teenagers. That's our desire. We shall see how we progress from there. And to help me make this discussion lively and to bring it live to you, we have our guests today, and let me introduce them to us. We have Margaret J here. Margaret, welcome.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, Mamlaka, and I'm happy to be back.
Karibu sana, we have missed
Asante,
you. So we are so
asante.
glad to have you back.
Thank you,
on our
you.
show.
All right.
Karibu. We're also joined by Jonathan Joroge Karanja. Jonathan, karibu sana.
Asante. Good afternoon, everybody. Very glad to be here. Very glad to be able to be sharing of this experience, and just to be able to hear and learn as well from this forum. Yeah.
Karibu sana. Let me tell you a little bit about our panelists. Margaret is a clinical psychologist.
True, yes.
So she'll bring a lot of invaluable insight into our conversation. And Jonathan is a market researcher.
That's correct, yes.
And he's also a parent. And I'm also a parent. We are all parents.
Yes.
We are all interested in this topic because it affects us. So without much ado, we're going to go straight away to the conversation. And I'll begin by asking you, Margaret, what is depression?
Thank you, Pastor Maggie. And even as we get into the conversation and try and unpack depression, let me first start by saying this. There's an oversubscription of the term depression. When we've also made it look like in some sectors, like if you're not saying you're depressed, like you're not cool enough, like you're not living on the fast lane, like you're not serious enough, like you're not hardworking enough. When we talk about depression from a clinical point of view, the correct term for depression, when you talk about a diagnosis for depression, you refer to it as a major depressive disorder. And there's a difference between stress and depression. Because then depression is a major depressive disorder. And please note, it's a disorder. That means it falls under the mental health disorders or illnesses. And it's very important that if you just have a low mood alone does not mean depression. There's the literal meaning, because depression basically means you're low. But then when you're talking about depression as an illness, then it goes beyond just one symptom of a low mood. And I think this is what we really need to bring out, so that then we don't give ourselves a diagnosis that is not there. For you to qualify to be given the diagnosis of depression, there are a cluster of symptoms, or there are a number of symptoms, the minimum of them, that you need to be manifesting in order for us to now correctly give you a diagnosis of major depressive disorder.
Wow. So it's not cool at all, because sickness
It's
is
not cool. It's a disorder.
So it's not cool for our kids to be depressed.
It's not cool for anyone to
be
be
depressed.
depressed.
So-
And it's not cool for anyone to just because you had a bad day, to just say, hey, you know what, I think I'm depressed. Just say, I'm under the weather or anything, you know, but when you keep saying depression, I'm depressed, then we are using that to whitewash what it is and to underplay it. And it is a major depressive disorder. It's a serious disorder that takes the intervention of a medical doctor, a psychiatrist, to treat it. While on the other hand, we also don't want to minimize and make it look like it's not anything serious. We don't want you to exaggerate it. We don't want you to give yourself a diagnosis, but we also don't want you to just wash it and wish it away. Yeah.
You are about to say something,
I was about to
Jonathan.
say something. I think, one of the terms you see kids playing a lot right now is I'm stressed. They're playing a game and I'm so stressed. They're watching a series, like, oh my goodness, those characters are stressing me. This is depressing. So you find that people actually then end up using the term so lightly that even when you call it out, then it stops having meaning at all for them. So I totally agree, I think, with your point around, first of all, help us understand it, even as a parent. And then once I've understood it, I'll be able then to be able to know, okay, whatever they are saying is probably just words. But then whatever I'm saying is actually probably now the truth of what we need to be able to be addressing. Yeah.
So to answer that question, when you're talking about depression, and now we are sticking with MDD, major depressive disorder. So when you're talking about MDD, it's a mood. It's categorized as mood. So what are the symptoms? Because in mental health disorders, we don't have signs. We have symptoms. And the symptoms are also behavioral, because they are observable by a third party. I can see them, you can see the symptoms in me, and I can also experience the symptoms. So one of the red flags when you're talking about depression, and this is whether it's for children or for adults, you're talking about a depressed mood. And please note, there's a difference between just sadness and just feeling a bit low because I had a bad day, and a depressed mood. And this depressed mood is present in a 14-day period, 2 weeks, same 14-day period. So it's not like 7 days now and 7 days next week, but one.
So continuous.
Same day 2 weeks period, 14 days. And this depressed mood is present most of the day, nearly every day, in the 2 weeks period. So meaning, in a 24-hour day, this individual is depressed most of the time within that day and within the 2 weeks period. That's the first one.
Right.
It can also be loss of interest in things otherwise enjoyed.
And now we're
remember,
talking about kids.
we are talking about depression.
Generally, all kids now.
Those two symptoms cut across everyone,
Uh-huh.
whether
Child,
adult or children. So you notice a loss of interest. Okay, let's again debunk this loss of interest. It's not just that I woke up today and I loved watching certain series, and today I don't want to watch it. It's a very visible loss of interest. It's not because I loved to do this and I'm not doing it just for one day. It's evident, it's observable that Margaret liked to do this, to cook, for example, but she doesn't.
So that's an indicator.
That's, it's obvious to anyone. Remember, I said it's observable.
Yes.
So it's obvious to the people around me that I am not interested in this thing anymore. It doesn't give me the energy, the psyche, and everything that it did before.
And that's include self-interest in things and self.
Yes. And then the other symptom, now when it comes to children, that's also obvious, the loss of interest in things they otherwise enjoyed. So for children, you notice a loss of interest in play. I mean, these kids, like when we were growing up, you'd be told you look at the shadow when it is the other direction, then you know it is time to
go
come home. You know that,
Yes,
that's what
yes.
Shosho used to tell us when you see the shadow. this
On the
way,
other side.
Then now, when you see it here, you know it's time to come for lunch.
Yeah.
And then you go out and play again. Then when you see it now behind you,
Yes.
then you know it's time to come back home, So you notice this child is not interested in play, they're not interested in their toys, they're not interested in the cartoons, they're not interested in going out, they're not interested in their friends, and they're not even talking about those interests. So again, it's not a one-day thing. We are talking about the same day period. So the other red flag, it can be either of the two. The depressed mood or the loss of interest. And then a cluster others that we are going to look at. You talk about loss of body weight, up to about 5%. And this body weight, it's not because I'm exercising or I'm on a diet. You just lose about 5% of your body weight. In children, you observe and look out for failure to thrive or to gain the milestones and the body weight. For children, there is age and weight. When you're this age, you're supposed to be around this weight. So if you're not, if this child is not attaining that, and there is no, nutritional explanation, maybe because they've been sick and that kind of a thing, that is a telltale sign that you need to pay attention to. Just that failure to thrive.
Are we talking about a baby?
We're talking about children.
From what age?
Let's talk about 3 to 12 in our case.
3 to 12.
Yeah, so that
Okay.
the next phase we look at the adolescents, because the dynamics and the risk factors for adolescents are different from this
All right.
age.
Yeah, so I think I want to talk to parents to pay attention because we're talking to children from the age of 3 to 12.
Yes.
That's what we are focusing on right now.
Yes.
All right. Yeah.
Adolescents
Yeah.
are still children,
They're still children,
but let's look at them as adolescents because their variables are different.
Different.
Yes.
Fantastic.
Then you also, for children, observe change in their eating and sleeping patterns. And we're talking about change. So they can eat or they may lose appetite. They have sleep and sometimes very disturbed sleep, which is also, and their sleep is, they've changed the sleeping hours and their sleep is very disturbed, like, they probably are having nightmares and that kind of, I think it's something to pay attention to. They are having trouble falling asleep and having trouble staying asleep. It's something to watch out for. For children, also watch out for the content of their play. Because as a child psychologist, we know what is happening with the child through their play. So for children, you can see a lot of aggressiveness. So they are beating their toys, or even if it is play with other children, they're very aggressive, or they're just there quiet and withdrawn, and they're not participating. in
But
the
when
play.
they are overactive, like parents tend to say, my child is hyper, but they're destroying things, they're hitting things, they come to your house, the sink is down, things are not where they should be. Is that a sign of trouble?
Now, there's a difference between a child who is hyperactive, probably bordering on ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, and a child who is manifesting aggression in their play. Because for the depressed child, it will be aggression. Alternatively, it's going to be there with their peers, their friends, in the play, but they are distanced. And that's why we are saying, observe for the content. Look out for the content of their play. Is it withdrawn, or is it on the other extreme of aggression? Yes.
I was just going to add, I think maybe as a parent, I think, and I like what you're sharing, because what becomes a challenge for me, if I was to think about my particular context, and I've got 3 sons. The eldest, I guess, is a bit past the topic, is 20, but the younger ones are 15 years. But when I look at them in their younger days, when they were in school, for example, so if I'm going to be able, as a parent, and I can see where my challenge will come through, to be able to notice some of the things you're saying may be a bit hard for me. Why? I'm working. So 8 to 5, they're in school, for example, they're in scheduled activities. If they're showing a bit of, in a sense, a lack of interest in an activity that they were previously engaged in, and maybe for argument's sake I've paid for it, as a parent, authoritatively I come and push them into the activity, so they continue doing it. So there's a place, I think, for me, and I'm actually expressing a concern for parents, is I may miss all these things you're telling me about simply because I'm so engaged on my parenting activity. I'm not really looking out for the details of exactly what you're saying. Could that be a reality for us?
Yes. Sadly, yes. Like really sadly, yes. Because by the time, remember we are talking about 14-day period, but this could have been present in a month. And like you're saying, we are busy parents. We don't have meals with our children, so we don't observe whether they are eating or they are not eating. Of course, they're in their separate rooms, so we really don't go to check on them. We don't even know about the quality of their sleep. And this is where now the other people, significant people in the life of that child, if, for example, it's the days they were going to school, it's very important for you to, have this conversation with the teachers and just find out, how is my child? How are they interacting with the others in class? Are they responsive? Are they withdrawn? Just reach out to the person who spends more time with your child. Because then when I get to hear from the teacher, then I get to hear from the nanny who is at home, how the child has been. At the end of the day, I'll get bits and pieces of information about how my child is faring. And then also, get to always have time with your child. That question of how was school? That opens just a whole conversation. Who did you talk to? What made you upset and that kind of a thing. It just opens a whole conversation, which could also be the doors of opportunity that will help you do that. But then again, like he says, we are too busy. We don't have time for the children. So by the time this become observable, chances are that the child has moved from mild depression to moderate, and they're headed to severe level. And because then now, at severe level, the symptoms are more. Yeah.
Wow. I think what you have helped us understand is that our children could be at risk, and as parents we are not aware because we are not paying attention. Calling on parents to be a little more, not a little more, very intentional as parents. And you talked about the factors, we talked about the factors in another conversation that predispose our children to depression. What are some of those?
I like that question. Number one, because mental health disorders do not have causes, they have triggers. And when we take our family members for treatment to the psychiatrist, they treat the symptoms geared towards reducing the symptom severity. Now, the triggers can be social. And the triggers is what the psychologists deal with. Because this could be the risk factors that push the child into a depressive state. So one of the risk factors is, number one, the environment where this child is. What is the home environment like? Is it a home? And I like what you asked, off this conversation. Is this child in an environment where they're experiencing love, they're experiencing, they're needed, they're wanted, and they are cared for? Is it that nurturing?
Wow.
Is it a stimulating environment that stimulates the child emotionally, psychologically, socially, spiritually, and everything about this child? Remember, children children must always have someone who is a primary caregiver. Now, this is where the catch is. The primary caregiver is the one who responds to the child's needs.
Yes.
So when I'm hungry, I run
Yes.
and I get food. When I'm cold now, I'm feeling cold, someone just is like, come back. It's time for you to wear something.
Right.
As long as this person is responding to the child's needs, and remember the child's needs are basic needs right now, that becomes the primary caregiver, whoever it is.
So you're actually saying it could actually even be the house help.
No, that's what I didn't want to say. No, that is just the truth. It's that person who is responding to their needs becomes the primary caregiver. So then, when as a mother, because initially and ideally, the mother is the primary caregiver in the sense that, it's the first 6 months you're with the baby, you're breastfeeding and everything and all that. The child attaches to whoever responds
To the child's
their
needs.
Yes.
Now, let's hear a little bit about attachment, because you're saying a child can become attached to a caregiver
Yes.
or a nanny and not the parent.
Anyone who is responding to their needs. And we are talking about basic needs.
Basic needs.
Yes.
Can there be a situation where a child has low attachment?
Yes.
Talk to us about that.
Now, if I cry as a child, a 1-year-old, and I am not getting my needs met, no one is responding, this child takes it that I am not needed and I am alone. That anytime I need something, there's no one who responds to my specific needs. So they're the kind of children who grow up feeling unwanted, unloved. And their attachment style is avoidant. So what does that mean? They avoid forming relationships with other people. They can also be very ambivalent in the sense that if you have this parent or the primary caregiver who, today I feel you, tomorrow I don't feel you. You're very unpredictable. So the child is not sure, when are you going to be positively responsive to my needs and when are you not going to be? So they also grow to be children who are very, very, very high on anxiety because of that ambivalent attachment style here. Because you're on and off. I don't know when the switch will go on
Or off.
or off, kind of a
So
thing.
it's an insecure state
So
of being.
this child is in this anxiety state. And they are also very, very careful to attach because emotionally you're not there. Psychologically, you're not available for the child. So the child also doesn't know how to receive positive emotions and affirmations. So when you say you love me, what are you going to say tomorrow or the next minute? Kind of a situation. So this child who is anxious is more predisposed to depression than a child who has a secure attachment style. Because the secure attachment style is I'm needed, I am loved, I'm cared for, there's responsiveness, I feel safe psychologically, emotionally, you're present. I mean, I view the world as safe.
Right.
So they're very low on avoidant and very low on anxiety. They form relationships and they form them from a trusting point.
Thank you so much. I think
And
we're
that will
going
be
to
the
take a
last
break.
one we'll talk about when we come back.
Let's take a break, and when we come back, we'll pick up the whole issue of attachment and making our children secure in our homes. So thank you very much for that far. We'll also be looking at the comments that have come up and questions that we can answer or respond to in a bit.
Ewe Mungu wa majeshi, ninapenda kukaa nawe. Maskani zako zapendeza, nazikondea kwa shauku kubwa. Heri siku moja mbele zako kuliko siku elfu mbali na wewe. E Bwana, nguvu na msaada wangu, takupenda daima. Moyo na mwili wangu Bwana vyakulilia Mungu wangu, na heri nikose vyote Baba, lakini nikupate wewe. Heri siku moja mbele zako kuliko siku elfu mbali na wewe. E Bwana, nguvu na msaada wangu, takupenda daima. Heri siku moja mbele zako kuliko siku elfu mbali na wewe. E Bwana, nguvu na msaada wangu, takupenda daima.
Welcome back. It's been nice talking about this amazing topic, and I have a few comments here from people who have responded, especially on our Facebook page. And I want to give a shout out to Grace Kavesu, Joe Baraka. You're watching, you're tuned in. Gakonyo, Emma Wajiko, Caroline Onyango, Maggie Mugai tuned in. And Maggie says, thanks for taking time to discuss mental health in issues in children. And Caroline Onyango says, I can't imagine a 3-year-old being depressed. I'm taking notes. That's very nice. And Mo, Andrew, going by these definitions, it's clear that we have been taking depression for granted. Kevin Moore says, I can't also imagine my 3-year-old being depressed, but I've noticed that he pouts and has slumps. It's usually because he's coming down with a flu or a bug, but depression. How could I recognize it? Thank you so much that we're having this opportunity to learn. Charity Mwaura Gatimo says, there are signs that one can pick, especially among the younger kids who aren't able to communicate what they are going through. I think that we're covering that pretty well. That's very nice. We have Hortensia Wagari who says mental health disorder do have causes. And they have triggers. Yeah, that's what we are looking at today. And we have a few other comments here, but basically the same. But thank you so much, everyone, for watching and making us aware that you have things you have noticed and you want to take them. We want to take them into consideration. Thank you so much. So this, if there's something we want to pick up, we pick up from comments. But let's also pick up this whole issue of attachment. Because we are saying attachment is important. And the child can attach to anybody who is available for the provision of their normal natural needs. If a child does not attach at the right age, from 1 to 3 years, is there another time of attachment? And let's also have this at the back of our minds. People who have not attached during their growing up, what do we see in later life? Help us unpack that a little.
Attachment is across lifespan, meaning all through.
All through life.
All through life, up to 80s, all through. So what happens is that the impact of the first 3 years of life is going to be replayed and felt 3 to 6 in adolescence, in emerging adults, and later on in life. Because our personality is to a very large extent also influenced by the environment we live in.
Correct, yeah.
So this individual who has an ambivalent attachment style or an avoidant attachment style, then we are saying is low on avoidance. You don't want to form relationships. So then they're the kind of emerging adults, young adults that we see, and the guys in their 30s and 40s who struggle forming intimate relationships. So when you go back and try and find out what happened, then you will realize they have an avoidant attachment style. And that is why it's very difficult for them to relate with people. So because then they are low on avoidant, because the ambivalent are high on anxiety, so they also are not able to relate with people very well. And remember, anxiety is this thing that keeps you on the edge. So, like on this hypervigilant mode kind of. So what happens? When you're highly anxious, because it's a very uncomfortable state to be in, you look for something to calm you down. So they look for psychological painkillers. So the low on avoidant, the high on anxiety kind of people are more predisposed to drugs and substance.
Because they're looking for that
painkiller. Just that minute of feeling better. And they're also very needy, extremely needy for closeness. So that also becomes a risk in the sense that they don't stop for a minute to scrutinize Jonathan or Margaret and what kind of a person I am. So they have a risk of getting into the wrong company because they will do anything because they want to be needed and to be wanted and to be loved. So they are more likely to get up in very toxic relationship. As long as that need for closeness
has never been met.
Has never been met. So anyone who passes like a good guy, they're just done. So any company that accepts them, it's very easy for them to get there. So then we see these things repeating themselves. As a psychologist, I would say they are patterns. Someone coming from a cultural point, then we will say these are generational.
Yeah, or it's
Or
a
spiritual.
generational or
Or
spiritual.
spiritual.
Or it came from their relatives. It's familial.
Exactly.
Or it came from that line. It's your fault.
And that's why
It's
it's
a
also
spouse.
dangerous when we have a high turnover of nannies at home. Because before the child gets to know this one, then a new one comes in, and the parents are not there. So they are very confused, and they also interpret that as I'm not needed. They're very ambivalent because there is no prediction. Yeah.
Actually, can I just add something there? Okay, one, I think we mentioned something about just the turnover of house helps or the people who are, in a sense, providing the primary care in the household. And one of the grateful things from my childhood is a lady called Rhoda. Rhoda was our house help for all our siblings. And I mean, my mom was very present, but we never had a change of. But they had a friend who had quite a frequent change of caregivers at home or house help at home. And there were incidences that happened to him because of that frequency that created a trauma at a particular point in his life,
young life,
that led to this. I think the other part about you mentioned that I can clearly relate with is neglect or lack of attachment. I teach Sunday school, and I'm glad Teacher Baraka is actually listening to this. And the younger kids, at some point, I decided to teach Sunday school because of my sons, so that I can grow up with them as they're going through church. And I could tell, even as kids are coloring, that child is an issue beyond their scribble. I could tell that child is behaving a bit funny today. They're throwing things, they want to attack the other kids. And when the mom comes or the dad comes, they're like, is everything okay? And I remember one particular one who told me, the mom told me, no, the dad has been away for quite a while. And the reason he's acting like this is he's not home. And then I moved on to a bit of an older group, about 10-year-olds. And this child was previously very active in answering questions in class. They're not answering anymore. They are sitting at the edge of the class. One Sunday observed it, next Sunday I said, ask him what's going on. He's quiet. I asked him, Mom, what's going on? Because he never used to the dad. It's like, okay, we're going through a divorce. And I could see it in what he took away from that particular child. So some of these mental triggers, as you call them, in the home, actually, if you're a bit careful, you see them coming out in church, in Sunday school. But I guess Sunday school is just one day in a week.
It's a 1 day in a week, 1 hour
5
actually.
days in class, I'm sure that has a way to be either aggregated further or cemented more in terms of behavior.
And we go back to what we were talking about earlier. Are we observing? First and foremost, are these parents even keen to observe that? Because by the time the child is totally, withdrawn and isolated at the corner, that started. I mean, this is just like the hate of what the child has been dealing with emotionally. And this kind of a child is, children are not able, when parents are going through separation, children don't have the capacity to understand that, hey, grown-ups disagree and it has nothing to do with children. So they always tend to take it upon, they think they are part of it. And especially because then also as adults, we have a way of triangulating the children into our adult issues. So you will mention a child. And if you come from certain communities where you're named after your grandparents, and so you're a favorite of this family and not a favorite of the other family, then those issues emerge and your name is right just in the mix of it. So then they don't... they can mentally comprehend and separate themselves and validate themselves from what is going on at the family level, and they just take it wholly. Now, these children also whose parents are going through separation, they are also very, very good candidates for depression. And especially if no one is helping them in a therapeutic way to process what is
what's
going
going
on and prepare them. And then parents also come in and they are fighting for custody and there are co-parenting issues and a child is like this beanbag thrown from one home to the other and all the issues that come with co-parenting. So it ends to hit them. So this child who is at the corner, why are they at the corner? They have a very low sense of self-esteem. They have a very low sense of self-confidence. And they are feeling totally unwanted. So where are they at? Ambivalent. I don't know when is this going to end? Is my dad going to come back home or not? Or what is going to happen to us? And the next thing they begin to think, if mom died, if dad died, where does this leave us?
Leave me. Yeah. Wow. Thank you so much for that good conversation and the understanding you are bringing into the conversation. I have a couple of questions here that let's try and see what these good people are saying. We have Emma Musenya. Oh, watching all the way from Sweden. She says, I'm tuned in. Very good topic. Question. Where does one draw the line between instant gratification and responding in time to make sure that the child doesn't feel ignored? That's one question. Let's take a few. Caroline Onyango is watching. Karibu Caro. Hi, how are you? She says, how would a parent differentiate between these triggers and tantrums? Triggers and tantrums, especially now that children are indoors 24/7 with lots of energy. We have Noel Owol watching all day from New Jersey. Hi, Noel. Karibu sana. It's 7 o'clock. You woke up pretty early. Thank you so much. We have another one here that says, live events such as, this from Mamlaka Hill Chapel, such as loss and even divorce have an effect on children's mental health, and therefore behavior. Richard Omoro, Karibu sana, saying good topic. Let's touch on those two. We want to capture the two triggers and tantrums, and then energy at home 24/7. Can that be mistaken? And then Emma's question was instant gratification.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, which one do you want to take?
Let me take the one at home.
The energy at home.
Energy at home, 24/7.
So when you're talking about instant gratification, let's separate the need and the good to have. Because there is a need. So if the child is hungry, that's a need. But if a child just wants a candy, that's a good to have. And if a child wants to watch a cartoon, and it is not the right time for them to watch the cartoon, that's not a need. So when you're talking about instant and delayed gratification, one of the other things that we are seeing right now, and especially with the young adults and the adolescents, and this explains why we are seeing schools being burnt and everything else, is that our patience has narrowed down, like really low tolerance to frustration. That is it. So one way of teaching children to be patient and to have high tolerance level is to deny instant things that are not the basics, that are not the needs. So if you want to watch a cartoon, like, you know, the way you teach children, during school days, there's no TV during the week. Then they learn to know, I don't have to watch it. It's not a must. It's not a need.
I can wait.
I can wait. So if it is dinner time, yes, it is dinner time, but everyone is not, not everyone who has come to the dinner table. Just because someone is 5 minutes, late to come to the dinner table. You can teach the children that, hey, wait until everyone is seated.
Gathered.
So what are you doing? You're teaching them to wait. And that is growing their patience. And that is teaching them to have higher levels of tolerance to frustration. So even when they find themselves in a situation where I would rather break the cup, they have already learned to hold on.
You can wait.
And to wait. But we are this generation of everyone is not at the dinner table, and this 3-year-old is busy opening the the dishes and the pots and everything, and they'll eat before we pray. So even teaching them that wait, you can't touch your plate before we pray. You're teaching them. And you're dealing with issues of delayed gratification. As long as it is not something that has, physical impact, negative impact, teach them to delay a bit. But then again now, don't deny them what is a need. We teach that with the good to have. Yeah.
Maybe just to add on to what you said, the Bible tells us to instruct our children. So there's a place to also be very deliberate about the instructions you're giving around what it is you're spending time on, for example, what it is you're doing in the house, what it is you're supposed to be doing. And that's our role as parents, to be able to instruct them. But I think the question asked as well about we're all at home now. How do you notice some of these things? There's a comment you made earlier about parenting being very deliberate. There's a place for me to be able to show up for my children.
Exactly.
It's very easy for me to, and I see it happening. I can actually be able to come from work, just briefly say to my kids, get back onto my laptop. I'll not notice what the kids are doing. And I'll be comforted in knowing that they're on their devices, they're playing a game together, but I won't be able to notice what's going on in that particular child. So there's a place to actually be able to even prayerfully ask God to be able to open your eyes to what it is that your child is going through. I remember one particular friend of mine who, again, they were going through the same patch you talked about, and the daughter, she went to pick the daughter, and with my wife, we're going to escorting them both to the car. But because the dad was absent, she came and held my hand, and then held the mom's hand. Yeah, just to show, just to get a sense of completeness around family, right? Now, if you had missed that, I mean, if you see that, it looks innocent, but we knew.
It reveals a lot.
We knew what she was looking for. Her hunger was for a father figure.
Yes.
And there's a place to be able to ask God, just open my eyes to what it is my kids are going through, and then allow me to be able to have a conversation with my child. Let me hear them. Create opportunities to be able to hear from your children. Whether it's through Bible study. The other day we were studying the book of Judges. At the beginning, it talks about the way this part of the retaliation was they cut off their toes and their thumbs. So the kids are like, wow, I mean, God allowed that. But then when they start talking and opening up, you then realize, okay, what are their pre-held perceptions on different aspects? What do they think about different kind of trends you're seeing in the world? How do those affect them? And then also, I guess as a parent, you're also able to parent each child individually. They're not all the same. So it's not a blanket. Or you're my three kids. Okay, all of you this one.
Yes.
You're like, no.
And traditional,
Yes.
Traditionally, that's how kids were brought up.
Yeah, exactly.
One makes a mistake, all of you get a chopper,
But it's never the case. I think
not,
I've got 3 boys, and there's a place to be able to parent them individually. There's one who will engage you intellectually. There's another one who will engage you from a part of what can we do together as a family. And you parent each individually, knowing that, again, their responses to the triggers in the environment will be individual, not collective. And then based on that, now you're able to then say, okay, what do we do for them in case they're going through a particular stressful situation, avoidable or otherwise.
Right. Thank you so much, Jonathan. I think
just
let
a
me
minute.
just say this before you continue, that our time is so much spent. So I want us to come to a wrap for this amazing topic. But so I want, Margaret, as you give us your comment, you give us a piece of counsel. How can we mitigate, very briefly, against these predisposing factors, right? And then, Jonathan, we'll come back to you and we'll ask you a good question on parenting.
So very quickly, to add on to what Jonathan is saying, the trigger and the normal behavior, go back to the definition of depression and which is a trigger. Normal behavior is not, if it is a tantrum, it doesn't last like most of the day, nearly every day.
Yes.
And then it's very important for us as parents to know the age and the milestone and the expected behavior of that age, emotionally, psychologically, and socially. Because then if we have this information that it's okay for a 3-year-old to throw a tantrum and to sulk for a minute or so, then that disqualifies the depressive symptoms that you're talking about, because there is behavior that is age appropriate. Like even instant gratification, you can't teach that to a 1-year-old. Sometimes it's very difficult to teach this. So what age is my child and what is expected? Then the issue of energy. Let's also understand this. School is not just for academic, but children go to school because of their social relations. It's an environment that facilitates development of social relationships. So when they are locked up in the house now, it's not just education they are denied. They're denied play, they're denied interaction, and they're denied a chance for them to feel independent and away from home. And sometimes these are the things they are reacting to. So that energy, as a family, can we find positive ways of channeling it? Maybe hobbies and creatives around this time. Things that add value that can channel that energy. My message to the parents is that any child is vulnerable to depression and to any other mental health disorders that have an onset age in childhood. The key thing with children is attachment. How are they attached to this family? And what kind of environment have we created in our homes for the children? If they're in the right environment, they'll be secure children, they'll be secure individuals, and they will thrive to achieve their full potential. So, children are like wet cement. Whatever touches them leaves a permanent imprint.
Wow, thank you so much for that good comment. Let me turn to you, Jonathan, and say, what's a place of prayer in a home, in a Christian home especially, so that we can mitigate against childhood depression?
Okay. I think there's definitely a place for prayer. There's a place for, I think I'll probably now look at it in terms of balance. And when I say balance is, everyone has mental health, but not everyone is mentally ill. But so if we're being aware about the mental health of ourselves and our children, there's a place to have balance. And that balance comes from one, where is a place for scripture? One of the things we at least have been gifted because of this COVID season is being able to study scripture every day of the week. Where, as I mentioned, we're doing Judges now, and the kids lead. The kids lead today, I lead tomorrow. But then that allows us to be able to understand the person of God. Because you understand the person of God, you understand the faith of your parents. And they may not be able to accept Christ tomorrow, but they'll be able to start being grounded in the tenets of your faith, and you allow them to be able to do that.
Right.
I think that place has also been able to allow them to have a bit of physical activity, be able to have a bit of fun with your kids, but also have that place to be able to talk with them. Luke 2:52 tells us Jesus grew up in wisdom, in stature, in favor with God and
with
man.
man.
Balanced,
Yeah,
very
yeah,
balanced.
yeah.
So as you think about the mental health of your child, the physical health of your child, the social health of your child, scripture is very central in terms of that particular play right there for you as a parent.
Thank you so much. I don't know how I can thank you ever because of making this topic so well appreciated. Let me just tell you what one Caroline Onyango has said. Thank you. Well understood. The explanations were good. Big Dave was here saying, instructing our children in the ways of the Lord. Jonathan, thank you. Very insightful topic in these times. Thank you, Reverend Maggie and Margaret. So I think this has been a useful time. The people have appreciated it very much, and I want to say thank you so much on behalf of everybody. We clearly were not able to tackle depression among teenagers. Certainly, it looks like a separate topic. Don't you agree?
It's true. It's true. The dynamics are different.
The dynamics are different.
Yes.
That is very well understood again. So I think we have a take two. So that we can look at depression among teenagers, because the dynamics, as Margaret, our clinical psychologists have said, are different, isn't it? Yeah. So once again, thank you very much for your time. We have had a chance to learn a little bit about our children. And I think one takeout for me is that parents cannot delegate parenting. The attachment thing is so important, because if our kids don't attach, they will not be well adjusted. And we all are craving for a well-adjusted child, a very well-adjusted individual in society, but it all starts at childhood. So let's do something about it now. We have everything has been laid out for us. We know the triggers, and we can mitigate that. And the word of God is so central. Discerning the will of God, praying for our children, teaching them to know, understand, and love the person of God is so important, even for a little time. So thank you very much. We see you next week on Wednesday. God bless you. Enjoy the cold season a little bit with a blanket, a warm sweater. Let them all come out. God bless you.
God bless.